Well, good afternoon, happy Wednesday, and welcome to the LinkedIn Speaker Series. My name is Noelle Picori, and it is absolutely a privilege as well as a pleasure to kick off today's extraordinary event. So how many of you have attended a LinkedIn Speaker Series event? Fantastic, everybody in the room, wonderful. So for those of you who are joining us for a first time on the stream, online, or here in the room, the LinkedIn Speaker Series mission is to bring in inspiring ideas as well as innovative thinkers to help make us as well as our members, so employees and members, more productive as well as more successful. So we've had dozens of incredible leaders, thought leaders, thinkers come in and speak to us over the years. You can always see our previous speakers at speakers.linkedin.com. And if you're like me and always looking for something new to listen to on your commute, think about downloading the podcast on iTunes. So we're super excited to kick off today and bring in one of the most incredible, inspirational people that we could possibly have with us, and is the CEO of Kind Healthy Snacks, Daniel Lubetzky. Can we get a round of applause for him? Fantastic. He is joined by Caroline Fairchild. Come on up, folks. So joined by Caroline Fairchild, our new economy editor and one of LinkedIn's finest editors. So we're so excited to have both of them with us today. So how many of you are big fans of Kind? Oh, love all those hands, wonderful. So when Daniel started Kind back in 2004, his entire idea was that he wanted to defy that conventional wisdom, that you had that you couldn't find snacks that were both healthy and tasty, and you couldn't find options that were both convenient as well as wholesome. So here, a decade later, Kind is leading the entire space as the ultimate purveyor in healthy snacks across the country. So we're very excited to have you here. How many of you have heard of Kind Awesome, their social movement? Anybody? Very good. So we're going to talk about that a little bit today. It's their social mission, which is the whole concept of making the world a little bit kinder. They're responsible for already over 1 million good deeds done worldwide. So very excited to hear about that from Daniel as well as Caroline. So with that, thank you both and welcome to LinkedIn. Feel free to take a seat.
Great.
And one quick thing that I will share, and then I'll hand it over. Thank you, Daniel. So one more quick thing that I will share is that I can guarantee you today is going to be filled with a lot of golden inspirational nuggets. So as you have those and you want to share your insights, I highly suggest that you feel empowered to share with your networks by posting, tweeting, sharing, whatever happens today in the room that you're really inspired by. So with that, think about using our hashtag InSpeaker as well as hashtag KindAwesome, as well as following our two speakers, and you can see their handles on the board. So with that, Daniel, Caroline, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Let's give them a warm LinkedIn welcome.
I'm so excited to be here today with Daniel. Before we get started, he has agreed to indulge us with some of our LinkedIn traditions. So, Daniel, what's one thing that we don't know about you if we looked at your LinkedIn profile?
One thing you don't know about me is that I'm a father of 4. At one point, I was a father of 4 under 4 because we have a son, then twins arrived, and then a daughter. Right now, my oldest likes to say that he's 6 3/4, and then we have twin boys that are a little bit less than 5, and we have a daughter that's 2.5. That's the boss and basically rules the house.
Great. And I hear you have a special talent that you're going to share with us as well.
Well, I'm a magician, so since you guys asked, I'm gonna try to make that sound disappear. Oh, no, it'll take me a little bit. But I can either, let me see your hands. I can either borrow your ring or your watch or both.
Why don't you take the watch?
I'll take the watch.
Give it back, though.
I will give it back. I don't know if it'll work when I give it back, but I'll definitely give it back. Let me see also your ring for 1 second.
Okay. Both of them?
Just one.
Okay.
So we'll put the ring here. Tell me what time it is.
Oh, it is 2:07.
I don't, not really. Oh, it is, but it's 2:07, but in your watch it says 11:07.
It says 11:07
Because you have
on
the
my
California
watch. That's
time,
embarrassing.
right? Yes? What time is it? Yes? Okay, so put your hand like this straight up. I'm going to take the watch, put it here, close your hand, put your hand right here. Now I'm going to transfer electromagnetic energy to your body, okay?
You're going to make it the right time?
Pronounce the magic words, Buru Buru Bamba.
Buddha Buddha Bamba.
Do you feel the heat?
I feel it.
What was the time?
How did you do that?
What time is it?
It's like 1 o'clock.
It's 1 o'clock.
I don't know if the camera can show this. Zoom.
All right, well, I need to get my watch checked.
I can
Apparently
take
I never look at it.
your ring and just also go like this, and then it disappears and comes back into this hand.
That was really crazy, guys. Well, Daniel, thank you so much. What you guys don't know is this is a really fun interview for me. Daniel and I actually go relatively way back. I met him this time last year, actually, when I was a reporter at Fortune. And I had an editor who was hell-bent on me writing a story about Kind Bar and figuring out how exactly it is that Kind Bars were, in her opinion, everywhere. She thought it was crazy that you could go on an Amtrak train and find a Kind Bar. You go to Madison Square Garden, you find a Kind Bar. You go to some random bodega in the middle of any city and you can find a Kind Bar. And so I spent months, as Daniel knows, reporting, looking into their supply chain, trying to find something that my editor deemed had to be malicious, not just good business, but something crazy. And the only thing I really found out is that Daniel is an extremely hardworking entrepreneur with a product that people really like, and that's what I ended up writing about. So it's great to be with you just a year after that story went live.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
And when we started talking, you talked to me about how much hard work you put into setting up that distribution chain, which is now incredible. Talk to us a little bit about what you did to initially get traction around Kind and Kind Snacks.
But I want to start by saying that it wasn't me that did it. We right now have about 600 team members. And part of the answer to the question you asked is that the product is just amazing, and people, after some time, eventually realize what sells well, and then they start carrying it more and more. And a lot of it was the product, and part of it is the team. I mean, we have an incredible team that is better at what they do than when I was doing it alone. Because when I started the company, I didn't know what I was doing. I was a confused Mexican Jewish lawyer trying to get Arabs and Israelis to work together. That's my background, and I'm actually not making it up. And I spent a lot of time walking up and down the streets, going, the way it all started. I would walk down Broadway, starting at 7 a.m. in the morning, carrying a fake leather case that that lawyers carry, but had taken out my legal briefs and filled it up with, at that time when I started, it was jars of sun-dried tomato spread and lots of pieces of bread, and I would go store by store down Broadway to let people try the product, and then I would finish at 7 p.m. Downtown, and the next day I would do the other avenues, and once I had enough orders and I entered it all by myself in my computer, I would then go and deliver the product. And I had a beat up Cougar, because when you park in New York City, which is all I could afford, the cars hit you. So I had to close the truck with duct tape, and then I would fill up the boxes, and I had to really, really quickly, when I was going to deliver, take the duct tape off, take the boxes, deliver, and come back before I would get a ticket from the police, because you would double park. So it was a one-person operation, if you could call it an operation. And that's how it started. And it's, the great thing about that experience was that it taught me so much about every aspect of operations. But the even greater thing is that now when I see our head of HR and our head of strategic development and across the board team members that are so much better at doing what we need to do, it's just so much fun to see people that can teach me and that I can grow so much more by seeing my team members do it. So a lot of what we do today, we had a board meeting earlier today, and I was just listening, and I was sitting around and listening at how people were analyzing our data and thinking about competitive things. And I'm like, it was very humbling to think like, wow, I can't believe these guys are saying all these things and doing all this stuff, and like, I'm part of it. Like sometimes I feel like I'm living in a lie, and that I'm just very lucky to be part of this incredible journey.
Right. But Kind Bars, your idea for Kind Bars, that wasn't your first product. You had a product before that.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that and kind of some of the lessons that you learned from that.
So my original reason why I left the law is that I'm very passionate about the common thread in everything I've done in my professional career is building bridges between people. So Kind is about helping us get outside our zone of comfort and connecting with that stranger with a Kind Awesome card, which we can talk about, and trying to get people to be kind to one another. But the deeper way, or the more assertive way that I started right after law school, was trying to use business as a force for bringing neighbors in conflict regions to work together, to try to shatter stereotypes between Israelis, Palestinians, Egyptians, Turks, and to try to get them to trade with one another. And the first company was called Peaceworks. It's still called Peaceworks, and it makes sun-dried tomato spreads and basil pestos and products made through cooperative ventures between neighbors that are striving to coexist. And as they trade with one another, they hopefully are shattering cultural stereotypes and discovering each other's humanity, and then they're gaining a vested interest in preserving those relationships because they're making money together, and that's the model. And you can tell the enormous success we've had because you look at the Middle East and peace is reigning and everything's going well. So you can tell,
Right.
everything I touch is a success.
But let's talk about that socially driven mission. When I was, a reporter looking for, a crazy story, you talked a lot about how a company can be competitive but also kind, and to conventional wisdom in terms of, talking about this and philosophy that you like to talk about. It sounds difficult to be both competitive, try and be, the number one bar on the market, but also be kind and socially driven. How as the company has continued to grow, have you been able to stay with that socially conscious mission?
It's a constant, in one sense, the way we design the company so that the social mission and the business mission work in harmony, and it's much more fun when they're intertwined and they advance one another, and they're in harmony, they reinforce one another. But at all times there are some tensions. Last night I had a dinner with my board where I was sharing some pretty ambitious ideas about things that I wanted to do with the company to take it into another break through even more barriers of how we think of companies in this century, and try to reinvent the company to become a force for social good. And my board members, who are extraordinary and extraordinarily bright, were like, calm down, boy, you don't know what you're talking about. And they were giving me a piece of perspective. And I don't think I'm right, and I don't think they're right. I think they're right about today, and I don't know if I'm right about tomorrow, but I think that there is an opportunity for companies to constantly explore, a pioneer in this space. If you think about it, what most permeates our lives today is the private sector. In the 15th century, it was the church that was the organizing principle of medieval Europe. And in the 16th and 17th century, nation states rose and they were the organizing force of society. 18th and 19th century, private enterprise and the Industrial Revolution brought the private sector to more and more prominence. And today, with the advent of the internet, I think it's the power of the individual and the private sector that are really mostly dominating our lives. Of course, government has a very important role to play, and there's a lot of things that it can do that others can't. And there's also things that purely an NGO, as I've also founded, can do that cannot be addressed necessarily by business. But the power that business has is that if you're able to ride behind market forces, they're scalable and sustainable. And so if you're able to ride on market forces, you're probably going to have more impact faster and be more sustainable. And the challenges that we're facing in society, that we're going to be facing in the coming days and years, are humongous. And as a society with 4 children, if we want a better future for ourselves and for our kids, well, most of you are children yourself, so you don't have kids, but for when you have kids, and they say the same thing when you go to kind office. Everybody teases me about why don't we have adults supervising, but the challenges that we're going to face are very, very serious, whether it's the radicalization that you're seeing right now take over, not just in the Middle East, but also on our shores and also all across, the challenges of nuclear proliferation, the challenges of climate change, water scarcity, resource scarcity. These are very serious issues. And I don't think we're going to be able to tackle them unless we, first of all, discover each other's humanity and work together as a human race. And second, seize on those market forces to try to drive more change in a more sustainable and scalable way. So I think the private sector business is a very important power and an opportunity and a responsibility that comes with it. So at Kind, our whole, what we're really excited about is trying to find ways to increase our role. And we're just getting started. We're at ground zero of what we can do. What we're doing right now, I think, is not earth-shattering. I think we're doing a good job, but I think where we want to go is, and the question is whether we're going to be able to redefine the way people see businesses and with the way people see Kind, not just as a company, but as a movement that they belong to, and as a community that they're a part of, and a state of mind that elevates all of us into trying to be kind to one another.
Yeah, and what you're saying, you're talking about tackling some really big social problems, and I can see Kind moving in that direction. But taking a step back, you're saying that in order to tackle those societal problems, the business itself has to be successful. And I know that there have been some tensions that you've had to go through just in the last couple of years in order to ensure that Kind continues to succeed. Last year it was, you had a bunch of competitors going out with packaging that was very similar to Kind. So how did you tackle that problem in order to by both being aggressive as well as kind of keeping that Kind mission that you like to talk about?
Specifically the legal mission.
Let's talk about the packaging.
So I think what Caroline is referring to is that there was a company that was infringing on our trademark we maintain of not just using transparent packaging, which other people have copied in our space, but where consumers got confused because the windows were very similar to ours. And in fact, during discovery, we got documents where we proved that was the case, that they had actually targeted our brand and said, let's take the Kind design and make ours have similar windows and similar colors and similar shapes. So it was creating confusion. I mean, I think, first of all, we took legal action and we sued them, and then we went through months of trial and discovery, which was painful for everybody, and then eventually we settled. But I think the more interesting insight to answer your question is, every time that I've been in a situation of a confrontation, whether it's that or when I'm working with Arabs and Israelis and trying to get them to understand one another and I'm dealing with that, or when I feel aggrieved or I feel somebody's done something wrong to me, the instinct that I have is to retrench. It's like, what is it, flight or fight? Like, you're either gonna fight or you're gonna run away, but you're upset and you're angry and you wanna attack. And a lot of people perceive kindness to be softness, to be weakness. But in fact, having the strength during those moments in particular when you feel that you're on the defensive, to rise up and just try to understand the other side, to have empathy, to have the ability, particularly when you're feeling under attack, when you feel that there's injustice being committed against you, when you think the other side is wrong, having the strength to be able to not give any ground, just understand the other side, can create so much value for society and for you and for your company. And in those situations, for example, I try to understand the perspective of the other side and to help them understand ours. And when you're able to do that, you can resolve conflicts, you can resolve geopolitical conflicts, you can resolve business conflicts, you can resolve personal conflicts. And it's very hard, it's not easy. With my wife, when she and I get into a silly tussle, it's very hard for her or for me to rise up and just embrace the other, because you're upset. But if you're able to, if you're able to just understand and remember that, you know, my wife loves me and I love her, and it's not about who wins, it's about rising above it, as my coach Jack always reminds me. Then it really, really can solve so much in life.
Right. And did you practice that philosophy when a few months ago the FDA came to you and said you have to take the word healthy off of your bars? They're not, by our standards, healthy. And then you recently responded with a new campaign to try and change the way that the FDA defines healthy.
So for those that don't know about this, back in March or April, we received a letter from the FDA advising us that 4 of our products were not meeting the regulatory standards for certain things. And most of them were technicalities, that the way we use the plus symbol, or the way we didn't include a physical address and we only provide a PO box. And we agreed to change all of those issues. But the one that we took most seriously was that they said that we couldn't use the term healthy as a nutrient claim. And in the back of our wrapper, we didn't ever even use it in the front, but in the back, in some of our products, it said healthy and tasty, socially responsible and economically sustainable, convenient and wholesome. This part of the and philosophy of Kind, where we're trying to challenge false compromises, and we're trying to show that you can achieve both. And we could have fought on the fact that that was not a nutrient claim, and that we had the right to use that language, which our counsel told us. But we, at that time, felt we should just learn from our mistake and be humble and embrace and agree to change it. Then we started going deeper and using this as an opportunity for us to learn and to become stronger. We started learning about the regulation, and we realized that the regulation makes no sense because it's a regulation that was passed in 1985, I believe, which is about 30 years old.
Before I was born.
Thanks for making me feel that. Really, make me, yeah. Okay. So back then I was already driving my first Cougar, but it was like one of those gigantic sailboats, that my dad got me for $400. Where I was living in San Antonio, Texas, and the first night I started driving it, like it broke down in the middle of like nowhere. So, I have no idea why I'm telling this story, but. But so what we learned is that under the current regulation, if you have products like salmon or avocados or almonds, they cannot be called healthy because their fat content exceeds the allowance under the regulation. Over 1 gram of saturated fat or over 3 grams of total fat disqualifies these products that in the dietary guidelines of the FDA are recommended for increased consumption. But you can have products like fortified sugary children's cereal.
Pop-Tarts.
You can have toasted pastries, as the term that my lawyers still make and use. You can have children's pudding. They can be called healthy under the current reg. And it really is silly because back then, there was a misconception that all fat is bad. Today, after a lot of science, we've learned that there's good types of fats and there's bad types of fats. Not all fats are created equal, and not all calories are created equal. And polyunsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats, such as those found in nuts and like almonds, in avocados and salmon, are good for you. And they actually help your cardiovascular functions.
Right.
They help you. They satiate you. There's all the evidence in the world that they're good for you. And what we did is we petitioned the FDA to update its regulatory standard. And if there's foods that they are recommending for increased consumption that we know, according to all science and there's consensus in the medical community, that are foods that we should eat more of, they should not be penalized because of their fat content.
And I mean, you're taking on the FDA. That's like a pretty big Goliath organization that I'm sure there are tons of companies with tons of lobbying dollars who would love you to fail. Do you think that Kind has the strength to really take on something as big as kind of the food guidelines that run our country?
Well, first of all, we're not taking on the FDA. We're working in a very collaborative fashion. When we first met with them, they said, if you see that this regulation doesn't make sense, one of the options you have before you file a citizen's petition. They explained that to us, and I don't think, for us, it's not confrontational. I know that sometimes in the media people want to sensationalize this because it's like sexy, the David versus the Goliath, but
Daniel versus the Goliath.
Yeah. But in our case, I think it's a very consultative thing. In fact, the people that I've talked to at the FDA, policymakers, scientists, nutritionists, doctors, over the last 6 months, for a small company like ours, it was a lot of investment in talking to all these policymakers, and it was a community that we didn't understand, that we had no connection with. Washington, D.C. is very different from the way we live here in New York City. And we learned a lot, and we grew and we stretched our muscles in that sense by doing that. But there's complete consensus. There's not one person that I've talked to that says, no, fortified sugary children's cereal should be healthy, but salmon should not, or almond should not. Everybody understands that this is something that needs to be fixed, and hopefully it's also sparking a conversation among us about a deeper issue, which is, don't think when you're eating food, don't be obsessed about the micronutrients. Is it health? Is it fat, protein, carbohydrates? Think about whether it's a nutritionally rich food. Use common sense. If it's something that it's vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, legumes, increase the consumption of it. Like Michael Pollan said, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. that's the advice from Michael Pollan. Is really, really good advice. And if we eat more healthfully and eat more of that stuff, I occasionally indulge, like even where I wear the kind thing, and then people like look at me like, "Oh, I thought you're not supposed to eat a donut." I eat a donut once in a while, but this is not being broadcast, right? It's just among us, right? I'm just joking.
There's my headline, by the way.
Yeah. But I think it's all about common sense and moderation and balance and not hyping things up. And yesterday was low fat, and then it's high protein, and tomorrow. Just don't think about it that way. Our bodies, we overconsume protein. We get about twice, every one of us, twice the protein that we need in our daily lives. We don't need to obsess about supplementing with artificial sources of protein to have too much. It's bad for your kidney and for your liver and creates bone thinning. You just need to eat in moderation, eat well, and eat normal food.
Right. I was going to drink a Red Bull before he came in, but I didn't want him to see me drinking a Red Bull, so I didn't open one. But
my son is the biggest fan of the soccer team, the Red Bulls, and the general manager is a good friend of ours who used to be the head of marketing at Kind, so we wish them only success.
I should have drank the Red Bull. But what you're talking about is Kind has really contributed to changing the way that people think about eating. Were we moving in the right direction? Do you see, obviously, we have a ton of health problems in our country that are driven by poor eating habits. Do you see us moving in the right direction? What are some trends looking in 2016 with food consumption that you're excited to participate in, or that you're seeing us move in the right direction towards?
My wife is a transplant nephrologist, and when I first met her, I'm like, a nephrologist? Isn't that the person that deals with dead bodies? And she's like, no, you idiot, that's a necrologist. I'm a nephrologist, I deal with kidneys. But with that said, she's a kidney doctor, and she deals with a lot of people where obesity and diabetes ends up depriving a person from their kidneys, and then the number of people that are requiring transplants is going up. So I do still think that there's a huge problem, a huge obesity and diabetes epidemic. And I think the second problem, which is related to the stuff we said earlier, is there seems to be desire in all of us for this magic bullet. We're like, oh, this is the new super product that if I just eat more of this particular ingredient, then I can eat a ton of everything else and I'm gonna lose weight. And we don't want to accept that life is a little bit more complex, and we just need to strike balance, use common sense, eat minimally processed foods whose ingredients you can see and pronounce, that's real food, and try to avoid, overindulging, and eat small portions of mostly plants and of nutritionally rich foods. And we do face a challenge both in our food industry and overall as consumers, where we want to believe in that next fad and we jump from one fad to the other, and when we find out that this particular magical diet didn't work, we go to the next magical diet. It's very hard to lose weight. It's very hard, it's something that I work on every single day to try to maintain my weight, my beautiful figure. But it's something that you need to. I love you. You're like the one that laughs the most at my jokes. Please give me your card so we can invite you to every time but even my really dumb jokes, like he's in there with me.
We're paying him.
Yeah, thank you. It's worth every penny. But there is a little bit of hope. There's a group called the True Health Coalition, where all these groups of foremost doctors and nutritionists have joined forces and are seeing the same problem, and they want to try to come up with some wisdom that may not be as sexy, that may not be getting headlines, but that's really providing people proper guidance. And I think they're getting some momentum and some traction. And I think people are more educated today than they were a year ago, and we just need to continue working on that.
Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about some of the social initiatives that you're working on right now. There are these cards that I actually got the pleasure of receiving a couple months ago, and I've actually started to hand them out. And I won't steal your thunder, but it's a pretty cool thing that
I
Kind's
prefer if you
working
talk
on.
about it. Tell us about what you experienced.
Well, why don't you intro what they are, and then I can talk to you about what I've experienced with them.
You sure?
Yeah, you can explain them better than I can.
So our company's mission is to do the kind thing for your body, for your taste buds, and for your world. So for your body and for your taste buds, it's about products that are nutritionally rich and that are delicious. For Your World is about inspiring kindness. And we've tried over the last 10, 12 years. I think all of you guys that are in the audience are getting the book. Chapter 8 talks to you about all the different experiments we've done to try to inspire kindness. What's magical about kindness is also what makes it most fragile. Kindness is awesome because it's pure. And when you're walking on the subway and then you spot a person that has a stroller and you help them carry up that stroller, not only do they feel good that someone helped them, but you feel good about yourself. And what we call it as nerds the net happiness aggregator effect of kindness, that both sides are better off. But a condition for it to work is that it's a pure act with no ulterior motives. Like, you're kind to one another because it's just the right thing to do, because we're human beings, we're here on this planet together, and let's just be nice to one another. And when that happens, magic happens. Both of us feel better. So in our effort to inspire and increase kindness, how do we do that without undermining the authenticity of it? So we've tried a bunch of different things, and I won't bore you. You can read about them, and I can bore you in the book. But there are actually some really fun experiments that we did, and a lot of lessons. But one of the things that really, really works for us is these cards, where the original manifestation of the cards, or the latest one, if I spot a person that does a kind act after the act has happened, so we don't interfere with that beautiful moment, after the pure act of kindness has happened, whether somebody gives their seat to somebody else, or seats their taxi cab to somebody, or carries the groceries for someone, or something like that, I approach them and, like, and if they haven't run away and called the police that this stranger is coming close to them, they're like, that was kind awesome. And in appreciation for your kindness, you can go to this website, enter this code, and we send you a couple kind bars, plus another digital card for you to then celebrate the next person that you spot doing the kind thing to you or to somebody else. So it's our way to use our brand to do a little small token of thanks to the person, and also introduce our brand to them at that moment, and hopefully inspire them to then become kind ambassadors with us in spreading kindness and kind. The limitation of it is that only our team members had those cards in their, I carry them here, even if Juliana hadn't put them in the, I carry my kind awesome cards everywhere I go. And the limitation until now has been that we have to have those physical cards with us as a staff. Starting a couple weeks ago, we expanded and opened it up for everybody. So every one of you guys, if you spot somebody doing the kind thing, you can send them a free kind bar on us. It's an honor system. But if anybody does a nice kind act, you can go to howkindofyou.com. And in howkindofyou.com, it walks you through how to celebrate a person that did a kind act. So now anybody can be part of the journey. There's another thing that we're doing that we're going to be announcing in January that also scales up. We have kind of two tracks: small acts of kindness, like this one, where we just want every one of us to just get comfortable reaching out to strangers and doing the kind thing. Yeah, because it's sometimes you don't want to talk to that person. They're going to think that you're a weirdo, that you're trying to get their phone number or something. So we're trying to make it okay for people to have the courage to be kind. And then the other thing is we have a big kind acts that we do once a month, where anybody can upload their cause on our website, and they can say whatever they want us to support, the community to support. They can say, please support this cause. And the way we select a group once a month is the community pledges a small kind act in the honor of those causes, and the cause that inspires the most kind acts is the one that the community adopts, and then we give them a financial contribution. Right now it's $10,000, but in January we're going to announce a much significant increase. But also we help them, the community helps them with might provide marketing support or other things to try to elevate their mission or their cause. So that's also a work in progress. We'll be sharing more news in January.
And both of those are pretty original ideas, and I know in the book you talk about the importance of originality and being original in business. Where do you feel like you get your best ideas from?
Whenever I'm not thinking about anything and it just comes to me. Like, I think it tends to be wherever I'm not planning it. Sometimes in the book, I describe different processes for brainstorming. There's a structured way where I'm actually trying to tackle an issue and I'm thinking through it, and I keep thinking through it when I'm taking a shower, when I'm walking here and there. But the best ideas sometimes come out of nowhere, and sometimes at 4 a.m. in the morning, the idea comes to me and then I write it down, and then sometimes in the morning I'm like, what was I thinking? What an idiot. Why did I wake up myself for that? But sometimes there's some good ideas.
Yeah.
But there's a process for fostering creativity, which I describe, and we have a kind process for encouraging creativity, and it's described, I think it's in chapter 6 in Do the Kind Thing, but the essence of it is separating the stages of creativity. There has to be a stage where you are creative and you don't impose any filters or constraints on your creativity, and then separate it after that. You have the filters to try to figure out which ideas make sense. Most of us in our nature, we're thinking with our left and right side of our brains at the same time, and we're like, oh, here's an idea, but no, it doesn't make sense because of that. And when we do it that way, we limit our ability to really come up with some crazily good ideas that are really going to challenge conventional wisdom. The better way is just engage the creative part and just think creatively, and there's no bad ideas. You just keep writing them out and just keep coming out, and only till you're really coming up with absolutely ridiculous stuff do you stop the process. And if you don't have stuff that seems absolutely ridiculous, you have not really stretched yourself on the creative front. Then you take a half an hour, you just walk, and then you come back, and then you start thinking about the process. Is this cost effective? Is it realistic? Can I implement it? Is it in brand? And you can then apply all the filters and then go through ideas. But a lot of the most obvious things were not obvious when people came up with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure that we have time for questions, but before we do that, your book talks a lot about your core tenets. One of our tenets here at LinkedIn is act like an owner. And I know that Kind has some interesting ways that they deal with ownership, deal with people leaving the company. And I think that everyone here would really like to hear about that from you.
So one of our 10 tenets also is ownership. It's a very, very important part of us. Every full-time team member gets stock options and gets a right to be an owner in the company. You guys are publicly traded. We're not. So it's more unusual in a small company that every full-time team member gets a chance to be a shareholder, but it's very important to us because we really want to build that culture. And it's not just the financial alignment and stake, it's also a mental attitude where we really want our team members to, if something doesn't make sense, to challenge anybody in whatever side in the organization to try to change it. And in particular, the new people have that fresh perspective to help us see when we're doing something that we've been doing too long differently. I think what you were asking that you wanted me to talk on is our culture of how we don't fire people. And it doesn't mean that people don't come and go, because it's unavoidable that sometimes there's going to be transitions. But first of all, the word to fire someone is just such a nasty word. It's taken this connotation of like Donald Trump, you're fired. This is, and it's only taking off from there. And this thought that somebody's been at that company for 10 years, and then when they decide that it's the right thing for them to move on, they're escorted out and they're given a box and they have to put in their belongings and walk out in shame, and they don't get to say goodbye or have a proper transition. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. What now? If the person is a bad person and they're causing harm to the company, absolutely. If they commit a crime or something, immediately let them go and prosecute them. This is not about being mediocre or not having the high standards. This is about common sense. You're going to take so much of a process to hire a person. The person's going to most likely be there for a while. Then sometimes things are not clicking or working, not fitting. The need to part so severely and then let that person go, or for the person to just walk away and give you 2 weeks notice. Why? Why is that necessary? In our company, what we strive for, the model that we strive to follow, is a process that's a little bit more in tune with us being a family, where we take care of each other. And assuming that each of us trust each other and care about each other, there's a better way to do it. So we, first of all, have a 60-day notice requirement. If somebody wants to leave, they need to give us 60 days notice. During that period, first of all, even before that comes, if somebody's unhappy, either the person that I'm reporting to or the person that reports to me, there's something that's not going on, that's not working, talk about it. That's the most important thing. If you talk through things, in my experience, and you talk about them early, 90+% of issues you resolve, because then the person has opportunity to grow. And if you have someone that's reporting to you and you don't want to give them feedback because you don't want to hurt their feelings, you're doing the worst disservice to them, because then they're not going to have the opportunity to fix the issue, and eventually things are going to break, and they're not going to have the opportunity to grow, and you're going to lose them. So first is feedback, and if people have trust that we have the right intentions and have open communications, you probably get rid of most of these issues. If you don't, if there's still an issue beyond where there's not a fit between the skill and the need, then we try to see if the person can fit somewhere else in the company. And if that still doesn't work, then we come up with a transition process where you take 2-3 months for the person to start actively looking for a job while still being responsible for their job, and they start looking for their replacement. And depending on the situation, the person that they report to might be involved, or in some cases, in my case, my person that's my chief of staff or my assistant, if they're going to leave, by the way, in my case, we have a 2-year requirement. It's an honor system, but they need to let me know 2 years ahead if they want to leave. But in exchange for that, they have undying loyalty for me to invest in their professional growth, because I know that they're not going to leave me hanging, and I can continue growing and growing with them. And when they want to move on, we can work together on a transition where they can interview the replacement, where they can train the replacement, they grow through that transition, they can look for other opportunities in the company, and they hopefully can grow within the company. Most of the team members that were formerly my assistants are now in other parts in the company, or they move on to that. And if for any reason they want to go somewhere else, I can be a reference for them. I can help them. They probably are going to do better if your employer can serve as a reference, that if you've been fired or you have to do it quietly. So there has to be a better way than this inhumane way, or like you're fired, or I'm leaving because if I tell you, you're going to fire me immediately. But the challenge is that we live in a world where for way too long the prevalent system is this other one. So people need to develop the trust to try to feel comfortable that you're going to take care of each other.
Great. Open it up for questions. And I'm told that there's a chat system at go/speaker series where you can enter your questions, and then Daniel will do some magic and they'll appear.
So if you guys have questions, you can come over here. I'll start with the first one that came from the stream from a LinkedIn employee in the Bay Area. I love your "and" philosophy. Would love to hear more about it. For example, do you do any employee events, whether it's creative brainstorm sessions or teaching improv classes in the company, to keep people that way and keeping the power of "and" really prevalent?
Yeah, thank you. So for those that don't know enough about what the "and" philosophy is, it's out of our 10 tenets is this central tenet that informs all other tenets. It's the tenet of the tenets. My friend Jack once at our company meeting in October came in and said, Daniel always talks about the "and" philosophy, but let me also talk about the "or" philosophy, because we need to make choices. And it's very important to understand that the "and" philosophy is not a replacement for making choices. In life, you have to sometimes make choices, and it's a daily part of our lives. It's just the false choices that the "and" philosophy helps you overcome. It's a false compromise. And the way it works is you need to understand what objectives you have. Let's say in the case of when we came up with Kind, we wanted to make something that was delicious, but also nutritionally rich. And the conventional wisdom is you couldn't make something that's healthy and tasty at the same time. And when you isolate those objectives and then try to understand what's the underpinning assumption that's making you think that you can't do this or that, then you can challenge that assumption. Sometimes that assumption is valid, and then you have to make a choice. But very often in our effort to be efficient in our lives, we've skipped over some thinking, and we're thinking falsely that it's this or that you have to have a company that's either socially impactful or economically sustainable, or any choice. And if you're able to isolate that assumption and realize that you can challenge it, either because technology now helps you do things that are different, or because society has evolved and for whatever reason things that didn't apply, or because from the outset people didn't think hard enough and they always accepted this paradigm, and now you're realizing that you can think differently, that's when you can unleash enormous amount of value. And almost all companies today that end up growing really fast is because they tackled a false assumption and they created enormous value by showing that you could accomplish two seemingly incompatible goals at once. And yes, we do engage in, I don't know, the person that submitted the question, I don't know where to look to answer the question. But yes, you can encourage that. We try to encourage in the way we think. I'm sure we can do a ton more, but we just held a brainstorming session a couple weeks ago with a bunch of team members across different disciplines. It was a marketing question that we wanted to tackle, but people from operations and finance came in with some of the best ideas. One of our team members from IT was like, boom, 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 all this creativity. Because sometimes it takes someone from the outside to help share it. The best way to learn about that specific process that we follow is in chapter 6.
Great.
If you don't have more questions, I'll do more magic.
Yeah, we do have more magic tricks. Well, I think, something I wanted to share, I wrote about in the Fortune piece that I did was you have what was striking to me was in your office you have a painting that says, in a place where there is no humanity, strive thou to be human. I feel like that, given the climate that we have right now, without delving into politics or anything, no comment, I think that that's pretty pertinent. So, I think everyone would love to hear kind of how you keep your kind nature, how you keep your humor when there is, all those problems going on that you alluded to when we first sat down.
Yeah, so that quote that you're referring to is from Rabbi Hillel, do you happen to know what century that was from? But many, First century. We have wise men in our audience. In a place where there's no humanity, strive thou to be human. And it speaks a lot to me because it reminds me a lot of my father's heritage and how he survived, because he was in a concentration camp in the Holocaust. He was 9 years old when the war started and 15 and a half years old when he was liberated by American servicemen, soldiers. And he made sure to talk to me about the horrible things that he went through, and he didn't pull punches because he felt that it was very important for me to never forget what happened to him so that I can prevent it from happening again to others. But he also made sure to talk to me about all the moments of kindness that were behind his surviving. And it really stuck with me that I wouldn't be around if my father had not received kindness from total strangers who risked their lives to help him out in very, very difficult moments. And a lot of times people think that, how can you be so kind and so optimistic? And for me, to be honest, it's more about survival. For me, the quest for building bridges is not because I'm a sweet guy, it's because I'm terrified of what my father went through and I don't want it to happen again. And I just want to build bridges between people so that my children will inherit a better world. And so I do get sometimes really, really sobered up. I mean, when this incident in San Bernardino where this woman went and left her 6-month-old baby with a grandmother and then proceeded to go and assassinate 14 co-workers. It's so difficult for me to wrap my head around it and to understand where that can come from. Like, it's so difficult. And it certainly does make me lose sleep but it doesn't make me lose determination. It only increases my determination to work harder for us to encourage universal values so that children all across the world will discover each other's humanity, and so that we will find ways for kids, whether they're Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Buddhist, atheist, or whatever, will understand that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all share in common a fate and a future and a destiny that we need to help one another to overcome. The challenge that we're going to face as a civilization, as I said earlier in the conversation, are far bigger than any of the things individually can be accomplished, and we better start recognizing that and start working together. And so there's a number of initiatives that I'm involved in beyond kind to try to help overcome radicalization, encourage moderation, and help people discover each other's humanity.
Great.
We have another question from the stream. There are two of them. I'll ask the first one, and then I'll wait for a New Yorker to have a question, then I'll come back with the next one. So the first one is, what advice do you have for young entrepreneurs?
The advice that I have is think really hard about whether this is the right journey for you. Really take the time to really evaluate your idea, to talk with yourself. Make sure, I describe it in the book, there's different phases of entrepreneurship. There is the creative phase where you come up with your idea. Then there's the skeptic phase where you analyze it to make sure that it makes sense. And then there's the evangelist phase where you just go and do it. And again, it's very important for you to separate those, because if you don't, you can get into a lot of trouble. During the creative phase, just come up with the thing that you think is gonna reinvent the world and be as creative as you can be. Then when you enter the skeptic phase, be your own toughest critic. Do you have what it takes to do this? Because it's not easy, and you're going to face enormous challenges, more than you realize. You have the financial ability to sustain it. Does the idea really provide a unique selling proposition or something differentiated that's going to be desired by people? Whether it's a social enterprise or a business enterprise or anything, is it really solving a problem in a creative way that is better than whatever else is out there? And every question that you should ask, what's the competition? If you think you have no competition, it means you haven't done enough research. Everything has some sort of competition. So really be skeptical about it and ask yourself those questions. If you don't do that, you might end up wasting years of your life just jumping into something that maybe you should have not pursued. So it's very important to have that skeptic phase at that period. And then, if you've gone through that intellectual trial by fire where you really asked yourself those questions and you've come out of that thinking this does make sense, then at that time you flip a switch in your brain and then you just go for it. You become the evangelist, where now nobody's going to dissuade you from pursuing your goal and making it happen. And it's very important for you to also have that third phase, because things take longer, and if you're completely convinced that it's going to make sense, don't give up too early. Now, of course, you need to be aware and be learning from your mistakes and make changes and pivot as necessary. But if you believe in something and you've really done enough research, then just give it enough for it to succeed. The fascinating thing for me about Kind's story is that it was born at a moment where I was about to give up. I couldn't make payroll. I sometimes had to skip my own salary, and I was scared that I was not going to be able to pay for my other team member salaries. My dad passed away the year that I was conceiving Kind, who was my best friend and my inspiration. It was a very difficult year. And I find it fascinating looking back that nobody would have blamed me for giving up at that point and going back to work for a law firm or to work somewhere else. It was very tough circumstances. But I believed in this and I kept going. And then all of those 10 or 12 years of mistakes that preceded it helped inform and suddenly create this beautiful journey where we learned from our mistakes and we kept those mistakes close to ourselves, and they helped us achieve very fast growth. So if you make mistakes on your journey as an entrepreneur and things are not going your way, that's okay. Just learn from them, and then eventually they're actually going to serve you.
Hi, what's the most memorable act of kindness you've either given or you've seen, witnessed?
Man, they ask me this question more frequently than you realize, and I never have a good, fresh, creative answer. I'll tell you the least kind act that I did today. I had a board meeting at 8:30 in the morning, and my board wants me to be on time because I'm a confused Mexican Jew. I have trouble getting there on time. And I was just on time. I was I needed to make that train. And this adorable little kid was in the platform. He looked like a 10-year-old kid, 8-year-old kid. And his backpack was not properly closed, so I told him, your backpack is open, and he couldn't close it. I helped him close it. And then he looked at me and he said, do you know where the 4 and 5 train is? And I'm like, oh my God, my board is gonna make me make me feel bad that if I do it. So I half walked them to the 4-5, and I showed him, look, it's right here, go down here. But I didn't literally take him all the way. And all day I've been thinking, that poor kid, like I hope he didn't end up, in Harlem, and now, he didn't make it to his class or something. So that was the least kind thing I did. And by the inverse, I'll just tell you a funny reverse story. But you know how when we're doing I cannot compete with the kindness that my father experienced during the Holocaust. And since we're now having fun, I'm not going to tell you those really, really tough stories. But if you read the book or see some of the other interviews online, there's some powerful stuff. But I'm going to tell you right now a funny story. I was heading with Juliana to another talk, and again, I'm running against time. And then, when you start doing small kind acts and you notice, you kind of get addicted to it. You're like looking for the opportunity to, because it makes you feel better, and it just makes you, it's fun to be able to be kind for somebody else. So you're always like, your zone for like the opportunity for kindness. And sometimes you get lucky and you can seat your seat, or you can carry a stroller, but they're just whatever, they're nice kind acts. But here I encountered the most beautiful opportunity. There was this 89-year-old gentleman, or I didn't ask him his age, but believe me, he's at least 89. And he was walking with a walker, and he was trying to go up and down. He was going from the 4, 5, 6 train down to the NNR, and then he needed to go to the other side. And he's like trying to go slowly with his walker, and I noticed, and I'm like, man, how can you never, like, Juliana's gonna kill me, I'm late, but I need to help this guy. So I say, sir, can I help you? He's like, yeah, and he really did have this Yiddish accent. Yes, you can help me, please help me. So I'm like, I start trying to help him down the stairs, but I'm like, I'm really running late. And suddenly, like, the subway's approaching. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to miss this one, then I'm going to be late. And he comes in with I help him bring his walker down, and if this is where this set of stairs are, or where he needs to go is over there. So I'm trying to help him, and I take his stroller and I bring the stroller running so I don't miss my train. And he says, "What are you doing with my stroller? Please give me my stroller." I'm like, in such an urge to help this guy, I had left him without his, like, not stroller, with his walker. And I run back and I give him this walker, and like, oh my God, I missed that train. But like, I this time I did behave, and I helped him go up to the other one, and then I came back down and I caught the next train, and we were fine. We didn't lose the time. But like in my thirst to try to do the kind thing, I had left the poor guy like stranded by himself, like looking for his walker.
Amazing. I think that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Daniel, for joining us for a great discussion.